to that car in front of me, but I suspect they're actually not paying attention to the road right now. It's like they've had more than enough opportunities to get out there. Now, especially. Minutes ago, it was 49. And it's only dropping from there. I think by 7 it's supposed to be in the lower 30s. You know what? I'm down with that. But you know what I'm not? I'm not down with the clown. After all, what is a juggalo? I guess, let me think for a minute. Sliding going on.
Yeah, Republicans are swapping Congressman Jim Jordan on the committee. He's the top Republican on the House Oversight
Get around to it eventually.
He's an ardent defender of the president. The ranking member of the committee is Devin Nunes. He's been publicly hostile towards the press generally. And
that's why y'all here with
media in Jim Jordan.
Can't see anything happens. Maybe someone can call the emergency services line and be like, yeah, I was watching this guy on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube simultaneously and all services, and he was totally like driving and he lost control because it's so wet outside, and then he did 16 flips in the air and now he needs help. What's his location? And you could be like down to the GPS coordinate of it, would be so accurate. He's at neg 38.25, positive 52.26. old job, my life insurance used to be worth $500,000. Because I'd been there for so long and I raised everything up to the maximum level that I could in the course of time I was there. My new job, not quite that much anymore. It's still there until it came out. Not quite $500,000. My death would have made a lot of people pretty rich.
NPR News, the White House.
As another new transcript is released today in the House impeachment inquiry, lawmakers are preparing to begin the next phase of the investigation on Wednesday. NPR's Windsor Johnson reports lawmakers will start to question witnesses during the first ever live public hearings. U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, will be the leadoff witness on Wednesday. House investigators will also question the Assistant Secretary for European and Eurasian Affairs, George Kent. The inquiry will continue to focus on whether President Trump used military aid as leverage to press. The Dow Jones
watchdogs worry all that traffic could lead to congestion and possibly collisions in space. SpaceX says the network can operate safely. Each satellite is equipped with collision avoidance capabilities, and if a satellite dies, it will fall out of orbit and burn up safely in the atmosphere. The company plans to launch another batch of 60 satellites soon. Satellite internet competitor OneWeb plans to launch 30 satellites a month starting next year. For NPR News, I'm Brendan Byrne.
And I'm Duahali Saikantao, NPR News. Support for 89.3 WFPL comes from U of L's College of Business, providing online programs created to develop leadership skills and business savvy. Online programs include an MBA, certificates in franchising and distilled spirits, and accounting programs that prep for the CPA. More at business.louisville.edu/online business. From Jockey Silk's Bourbon Bar, emerged from the birthplace of bourbon, hosting a collection of rare spirits. Now open, offering a selection of more than 130 Kentucky bourbons. More at Jockey Silk's
Satellite. I'm not talking about the David Bowie song, Satellite, which is actually pretty good songs. One of my favorite songs off the album. Satellite, or Earthling as well. Hey Siri, what's the current weather in Louisville, Kentucky? What's the current weather in Louisville, Kentucky? It's 39 degrees now. Drop about 10 degrees since I've left work. It's cold. Spectacular.
From Fidelity Investments.
Like collisions.
Of people between the ages of 18 to 29. They found that just 12% backed Buttigieg. Now, put that into some context. About 3 times as many people supported Warren and more than twice as many backed Sanders. Now, these things all look really different if you look at the oldest group of voters in that survey. That's people who are 65 years old and older. More than a fifth of those voters backed Buttigieg, and only one candidate performs better among that group, and that's former Vice President Biden.
You know, Juana, we hear a lot about young voters come election time. What's different in this moment?
Sure, so there's a couple things to keep in mind here. The first is that younger voters do not tend to vote in as high numbers when you compare them with other voter groups. Now, that being said, many people who study voter turnout are looking to the high turnout among young voters during the 2018 midterm elections, and some of them have suggested that that means the 2020 election could be different. Now, any candidate has to be able to pull together a broad coalition of voters if they want to win a general election. And this is something that's particularly important for Pete Buttigieg. He's had a hard time finding traction with black voters. If he could do well with young voters of all races, that could perhaps balance his lack of traction with black voters and voters of color.
Juana, we heard a bit about Iowa, but nationally, can you tell us about how Buttigieg is stacking up compared to the other candidates, specifically with his vote?
Sure. So it appears nationally that he's actually doing worse than in Iowa, and that's somewhere he's been campaigning a lot. Harvard University's Institute of Politics asked those 18 to 29-year-olds how they would vote if the primary were held today. More than a quarter of those voters said they're behind Bernie Sanders. Another
actually graduated. And then the other is clearly kind of a more moderate lane where he's competing with Joe Biden.
What's the Buttigieg campaign doing to deal with this?
They're doing quite a bit, actually. So earlier this year, they brought on a National Youth Engagement Director. Mark McMore is the former president of the College Democrats for America, and he's recently been on a bus tour across a number of campuses to engage college supporters. And the campaign also points out this. They say that unlike other candidates in the race, Buttigieg has a personal stake in addressing some of the issues that are most important to young voters. So things like climate change, student debt, and gun violence. Because unlike some other folks, Buttigieg will be around to deal with that impact if those issues go unaddressed.
That's NPR's Juana Summer. She covers demographics and culture for NPR Politics. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
An 89-year-old Holocaust survivor is the target of hundreds of daily death threats in Italy. NPR's Sylvia Poggioli reports on how these threats show that anti-Semitism, racism, and hate speech are not just ideas from Italy's past, they are under debate today.
In 1943, 13-year-old Liliana Segre was deported to Auschwitz with the number 75,190 tattooed on her arm. After the war, she says most people didn't want to hear about the Holocaust. She became a grandmother at age 60 and realized she hadn't done her duty to inform younger generations about the horrors of the genocide. And she began to meet with school children to describe life in a Nazi death camp. Her work drew public attention, and last year Segre was named Senator for Life, acknowledging her as Italy's historic memory of the Holocaust. A TV interviewer this month asked what that meant to her.
Inside, I always was that little child, suddenly banned from going to school, who became invisible to the world around her. 80 years later, she becomes Senator for Life. I can't find words to describe my emotion.
But greater visibility made Segre a target of online anti-Semitic vitriol, some 200 attacks a day. Segre responded to the rising nationalistic and anti-immigrant sentiment by calling for the creation of a parliamentary committee to investigate hate speech, racism, and anti-Semitism. The vote passed, but all right-wing parties abstained, arguing it would limit free speech. Segre was stunned.
I thought a proposal against hatred in general, which we are all witnessing, would be an ethical, moral issue. I felt like a Martian in the Senate.
5 days after that interview, the Milan police office announced Segre had been assigned 2 security agents following a surge in online threats. Ruth Dureghello, president of the Rome Jewish community, says that's a sign of society's 7 decades of failure in education.
This is real crisis for all of us, of all the system, of all the democracy. That means that she must be protected for the hate as it was in the past.
Rome's old Jewish ghetto is one place where signs of the past are very visible. In front of many doorways, small, square brass plaques are nestled among the cobblestones. They're called stumbling stones that read, "Here lived." At number 9, Via Portico d'Ottavia, there are 12 stones, with each resident's name, date of birth, and date murdered in a Nazi concentration camp. Next door is a kosher restaurant, La Taverna del Ghetto. Owner Angelo Di Porto says what happened to Segre makes him ashamed to be Italian. It's also, he says, a warning.
Unfortunately, history teaches us that when Jews are under attack, that leads to persecutions, dictatorships, and misfortunes for society as a whole. Therefore, non-Jews are the first ones who should be worried about what's happening here.
One person who's worried is Paolo Berizzi, author of books on the rise of neo-Nazism and neo-fascism. Contrary to other countries that had totalitarian regimes, he says Italy never came to terms with its past. He blames post-war democratic governments for believing fascism was dead and buried.
Fascism can be reborn at any time and in any part of the world under new forms, not with black shirts.
Fascism, says Berizzi, expresses itself in new, liquid ways, sometimes hard to identify, but in the end, very visible. Sylvia Poggioli, NPR News, Rome.
things considered. SpaceX launched dozens of communications satellites into orbit today using a single rocket. The commercial spaceflight company is planning to launch hundreds more to build a global broadband network. But as NPR's Jeff Rumpel reports, some worry all these satellites could create chaos in the Earth's orbit.
SpaceX calls its network Starlink, and it's ambitious. The goal is to provide
I just heard the
high-speed
story
internet
like
access to anyone on the
14
planet
minutes
using
ago.
a huge network of satellites.
In the first iteration, they're really focused on about 1,600 to get full global coverage, and maybe something between 400 and 800 to get a decent starting service.
Tim Farrer is president of TMF Associates, a satellite communications consultancy. Ultimately, the company has told regulators it could launch as many as 30,000 satellites. By contrast, there are only around 2,000 satellites currently in operation today. Farrer says this ambitious project is all about making money. Currently, SpaceX is valued at about $30 billion, but its revenues are just a fraction of that number.
If it's going to justify that valuation, it's going to have to generate an awful lot more revenue in the future. And the only realistic way to do that in the next few years is to get into the communications business.
SpaceX is moving fast. It's planning up to 24 launches next year, each carrying many dozens of satellites. Meanwhile, a rival company called OneWeb says it will launch more than 30 satellites each month starting in 2020. Hugh Lewis is an orbital debris expert at the University of Southampton in the UK who's consulted for OneWeb.
The scale of